Corp News, hosted by Angie Webster, exclusive to Corp Radio. Tune to the business frequency.
You are listening to the Impact Report on Corp Radio. This is the show where we unpack the week's business headlines in plain language. Every other week, we cut through the noise and focus on one question. What does this mean for your business? What does today's news mean for your customers, your costs, your risks, and your opportunities? That's what we're here to explore. Here's what's made headlines this week. Amazon's low Earth orbit satellite network has announced that it will be entering South Africa via partnerships with Herotel and Vodacom. Richmond has just secured 330 million rand in backing from RMB and Standard Bank to expand its AI-powered SME lending platform. And what happens when protests disrupt business? We take a look at the hidden costs of township economies. And lastly, the agricultural and economic analysts are warning that climate shocks are hitting South Africa's food businesses. Hi, and welcome back to our show, The Impact Report. I'm your host, Angie Webster. Thank you for listening in. Before we begin today's show, the other day while waiting to pick up my son from school, and as I was scrolling, I bumped into an intriguing article, and I thought this is something worth sharing. We spend so much time talking about interest rates, AI, regulations, and billion-rand companies that we sometimes forget where South Africa's real economy is happening. Business Tech recently profiled a woman who has built a thriving business, selling fried chicken pieces in one of South Africa's busiest townships. Her business now generates around 720,000 in revenue. Now, it's tempting to hear that number and think the secret must be complicated. Well, it isn't. She didn't invent a new app. She didn't raise venture capital. She didn't disrupt an industry. She simply solved a problem that existed every single day. People are hungry. They want affordable, convenient food. She serves it consistently. I think that's the reminder many entrepreneurs need to hear this week. We often chase the big idea when the next successful business might simply be the ordinary thing done exceptionally well. Innovation doesn't always mean inventing something new. Sometimes it means serving your community better than anyone else. So here's a question I'd leave for you today. What problem do your customer face every single day? Because businesses aren't built by having clear ideas. They are built by solving boring, everyday problems consistently. And if someone can build a thriving enterprise from a roadside braai, imagine what can happen when you become indispensable to the people you serve. Something to think about, eh? Let's begin with a game changer for local business owners, especially if you've ever had a customer walk away because your card machine lost signal. Amazon's low Earth orbit satellite network, formerly known as Project Kuiper, now Amazon Leo, has entered South Africa and is teaming up with local giant Herotel. Herotel, a local ISP, launched a new service called Avery, powered by Amazon Satellite, which is set to launch officially in 2027. Now, why should you care? If you run a farm, a lodge, a mine, or a small business in town where laying fiber optic cable or building cell towers just costs too much, this completely shifts the landscape. You are looking at high-speed, low-latency internet anywhere in the country. Amazon Senior VP David Zapolsky put it simply, this is about tearing down barriers for those who still like reliable internet for work, education, or simple daily life. But here's the best part. Because Amazon partnered directly with local ISPs like Herotel, you are not dealing with an overseas call center or paying in US dollars. You get local technicians, local customer support, and billing straight in rands. Plus, Vodacom and Vanu will use this tech to power cell towers in remote areas, giving metro or peri-urban businesses a rock-solid backup connection while fiber is damaged, stolen, or interrupted by local power grid failures. What's the key business takeaway? What this basically means is that rural retailers, farm stores, or pop-up markets will no longer lose sales due to network dropouts during card or digital payment transactions. And for city and township businesses, satellite internet acts as the ultimate failsafe. When fiber lines are damaged or grid power drops, your operations, payments, and communications stay online seamlessly. Now, switching gears to some interesting news from the local private sector. Richmond, a South African fintech outfit, just pulled in 330 million in fresh funding. What makes this particularly notable is the source of the funding, which comes from two of the country's biggest heavyweights, Rand Merchant Bank and Standard Bank. They are backing Richmond to scale up their AI-driven lending platform, which aims to get working capital into the hands of small and medium businesses a whole lot faster. To put this into context, small-medium enterprises drive about 40% of our GDP and employ roughly 60% of the workforce. Yet, they're sitting on a massive funding gap, somewhere between 350 billion and 386 billion, depending on who you ask. What's the key issue? Traditional banks usually demand audited financials, physical collateral, and rock-solid cash flow predictability. And for a lot of growing businesses, that's just not realistic. And that's where Richmond tries to flip the script. Instead of drowning applicants in paperwork, the platform plugs directly into real-time data. Think accounting software like Xero, Sage, or QuickBooks alongside live bank feeds. The AI evaluates actual financial health on the fly, skipping the traditional need for asset collateral. Because of that setup, approval decisions happen in minutes rather than weeks, and repayments are structured daily, weekly, or monthly to actually match a small business erratic cash flow. Richmond have already quietly moved over 2 billion into the market since 2016, but this new institutional cash injection shifts things up a gear. For small business owners, it really comes down to three things: fast access to cash when opportunity pops up, a genuine shot at funding even without a long paper trail, and repayments that won't strangle your operational cash flow during a slow month. Beyond just one company's growth, having RNB and Standard Bank throw their weight behind this is a huge vote of confidence in AI-led credit scoring. It shows the traditional market is finally admitting that the old way of funding small businesses is broken, and that real-time data might just be the bridge over the massive economic gap. Now, if you own a spaza shop, a salon, a small retail store, or you're in logistics, or you supply township businesses, this one is especially for you. Let's talk about the aftermath of the 30 June protests. At first, many people thought the biggest story was about immigration, but as the dust settles, the bigger business story is actually about supply chains. Here's what happened. After the protests, many township businesses either closed temporarily or reduced trading. Some shop owners were attacked, some businesses were looted, and many suppliers simply stopped delivering into affected areas because of safety concerns. Then something interesting happened. People started noticing that the price of bread had gone up in some townships. There was a rumor during the rounds that it was because South African-owned shops had taken over from foreign-owned shops, but researchers who looked into it found something different. The higher bread prices weren't mainly about who owned the shops. They were about delivery trucks not arriving. Bakeries temporarily stopped servicing certain areas because of disruptions. In business language, that's a supply chain problem, not an ownership problem. And that's the lesson every business owner should pay attention to. Think about it. You can have customers ready to buy, you can have money in the bank, you can have shelves waiting to be stocked, but if your suppliers can't reach you, you don't have a business. This story reminds us that sometimes the biggest threat to a business isn't competition, it is disruption. Whether it's protests, floods, strikes, load shedding, cyber attacks, or road closures, your business needs a backup plan. So here's a quick challenge for you. Ask yourself these three questions. If my main supplier stopped delivering tomorrow, who would I call next? Do I keep enough stock of my best-selling items to survive a few days of disruption? Can I still communicate with my customers if my business has to close unexpectedly? Those aren't just nice-to-have questions anymore. They are part of running a resilient business. And here's something else to think about. Many township businesses don't operate in isolation. Your local bakery depends on the flour supplier. The spaza shop depends on the wholesaler. The wholesaler depends on transport companies. Everyone is connected. When one link breaks, everybody feels it. So instead of only focusing on sales, Spend a little time strengthening your network. Build relationships with more than one supplier. Know your neighboring businesses. Join your local business association or WhatsApp group. Sometimes information moves faster than deliveries. This week's takeaway is simple. Don't just manage your business, manage your risk. Because customers remember the businesses that stay open when everyone else is struggling. And as we close out this week, I wanted to end on a story that sits right at the intersection of our daily lives and global business. When we talk about climate change and agriculture, our minds usually go straight to the farm, the dry fields, heat waves, or crops failing. But a study reported by AgriFocus Africa shows the real pressure point is the middleman, the agri-processing sector. Researchers surveyed 113 agri-processing businesses across Gauteng. These are the companies doing the heavy lifting between the farm and your kitchen table, whether milling grain, processing dairy, curing meat, baking bread, or packaging fresh produce. In South Africa alone, this sector accounts for roughly 25% of all manufacturing output and supports over 300,000 direct jobs. And what's the problem, you ask? They are getting squeezed from both sides. Climate shocks like droughts or extreme heat waves dry up raw supply from farmers. At the same time, municipal challenges like power outages and water shortages turn running processing facilities and cold storage into a daily high wire act. When processors face higher operating costs, unreliable ingredients, or spoiled inventory from heat and power disruptions, two things happen. Grocery bills goes up, and availability drops for consumers while profit margins shrink and job stability erodes for businesses and their workers. So what can any business, whether in food processing, retail, or tech, learn from how these enterprises are adapting? Traditional business training isn't enough anymore. Knowing how to run a balance sheet is essential, but understanding environmental risk is now a critical thing for survival. Secondly, micro-adaptations pay off big time. Things like shifting worker hours to avoid midday extreme heat and expanding products with longer shelf life, diversifying suppliers, and upgrading cold storage efficiency. And lastly, infrastructure and access to capital are a non-negotiable. Adaptation takes resources. The study highlighted that women entrepreneurs in particular face deeper barriers to accessing finance and tech. Closing the gap and investing in reliable local infrastructure helps the entire economic ecosystem stay afloat. The bottom line is, adapting to climate change isn't optional anymore. It is how businesses survive. Whether you run a local bakery or a global supply chain, the ones paying attention to these risks now will be the ones still standing later. This concludes your business news catch-up for the week. Thanks again for listening in. But before we go, this week's business takeaway is simple. The doors are opening. Connectivity, capital, export markets. The question is whether your business has the resilience to walk through them when the ground keeps shifting. If you want more tips and insights for your business, visit our other podcasts on our website, www.corpradio.online. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and get in touch at info@corpradio.online. Thank you for joining me on the Impact Report. Until next time, stay informed, stay adaptable, and remember, don't just read the news, understand its impact. I'm Angie Webster. Chat soon. Bye.